Hey, thanks for sticking around for the little break in regularly publishing episodes. We just updated to a new editing computer and took a bit of time to get things back on track. But without further ado, here's the new episode.
Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
It is our basic human right to be fucked up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
Hello, occultists. I am Richard Bigley, and recording with me remotely, I have...
Leon Filger. Oh, fuck you. We got to come up with a more standardized way of doing this.
No, it's more fun this way.
Yeah, I appreciate this. It feels more organic.
Okay, well, Leon Filger, it's me. I'm here.
I'm Ood. My name is Ood.
And
Gallifrey. Yeah.
I'm the soundboard demon. Before you introduce the guest before me, Richard. Fuck
what
you, Pepper.
Fuck? Are we just like interrupting each other? This is okay, fine. Fuck all of you.
This is the hostile introduction.
Welcome. This is the angry third episode of Drinking Too Much episode.
Yeah, it's everyone's a little more aggressive now because we've all been drinking.
Well,
so
it's like we've switched over on our server to King of the Hill mode, and now it's whoever can introduce themselves the best. I'm Pepper Coyote.
Oh, I saw you sneak that in. Okay, so in a 1993 British telecom commercial, astrophysicist Stephen Hawking says from his deck talk text-to-speech machine, "For millions of years, mankind lived just like the animals. Then something happened which unleashed the power of our imagination. We learned to talk, and we learned to listen. Speech has allowed the communication of ideas, enabling human beings to work together to build the impossible. Mankind's greatest achievements have come about by talking, and its greatest failures by not talking."
It doesn't have to be like this. Our greatest hopes could become reality in the future. With the technology at our disposal, the possibilities are unbounded. All we need to do is make sure we keep talking.
This quote would later be sampled in a couple of Pink Floyd songs.
For millions of years, mankind lived just like the animals.
Anyway, let's do some Poison.
So, what's your poison?
This episode is sponsored by Last Mountain Distillery, Saskatchewan's first microdistillery. Producing over 20 different products from vodka, rum, whiskey, flavored vodka, and liqueurs, they have something for everyone. Their newest seasonal release, Hibiscus Lime Vodka, is sure to be perfect for your newest summer drink. Find their products at your closest local retailer or visit them at www.lastmountaindistillery.com for more information.
With a huge backlog of waste from the defense program and a growing inventory of waste from the nuclear power industry, the country is continuing to create more waste without knowing what to do with what we already have. We could be creating a radioactive waste monster with no cage to keep it in. radioactive waste. Reported by Floyd Calvert.
There is no doubt in my mind that the combination of the military and peaceful nuclear energy program has already caused a very, very grave health effect upon the population of the U.S. and the world.
We are not far advanced from where we were 20 years ago. We have not found a place to put nuclear waste. We have not settled on a specific design for disposing of nuclear waste. We do not know how much it's going to cost.
Well, we've been handling radioactive materials for 30 years. I'm sure we can handle them for hundreds and hundreds of years in the future.
If we don't have available to us the use of nuclear energy, it will truly be catastrophic.
They say they can put it in cement blocks. Why don't they build an area around the White House and see that they would enjoy that as a fence?
The government says that because of our addiction to energy, we need more nuclear power plants. We now have 64 nuclear plants operating in the United States. The government says that we will need as many as 500 in the next 25 years if we're going to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. The problem is that as the nuclear industry grows, so grows the waste problem. Nuclear waste is dangerous because it is radioactive. Too much radiation can cause cancer and birth defects. Just how much radiation is dangerous is a matter of debate.
We have radioactive waste in this country in large quantities. We have to, I believe, develop an acceptable way to store that for long periods of time. It's a problem that's not going to go away. It's a problem that has to be solved and that we're addressing right now.
The threat of slow developing cancer or genetic disease is difficult to document, although there have been some industry-wide studies.
Looking at the allowed dose of radiation for the population, allowed by the Atomic Energy Commission and other government agencies, we calculated that if the population received this allowed dose, there would be an increment of 32,000 extra cancer deaths per year, each year, in the United States.
Dr. Goffman is just plain wrong, and this has been, his incorrectness has been verified by the report of the National Academy of Sciences 2 or 3 years ago, by informal statements of the International Commission on Radiological Protection, and by informal statements of the National Council on Radiation Protection in this country. He simply made some wrong assumptions and followed them through and came to the wrong answer.
Some people accept the risk in exchange for growth, like Mrs. Arthur Pugh, who runs a gas station and a general store near the project.
Well, I think we need progress, because you have to go forward. You can't just stand still, not in this world today.
Moving on to the episode, if a person was, trying to communicate with you, but they weren't from this era, like say they were like a playwright in 1596, anyone familiar with Shakespeare can, see how language has evolved over the few hundred years.
My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks.
Or like if you were a writer in the 1300s, anyone who studied Chaucer also, sees the diversion between, Chaucer's English and, what we speak today. That basically, 650 years of language evolution actually separates us from the Canterbury Tales to this Occultae Veritatis episode.
One that April with his shower suit, the drought of March hath pierced to the root, and bathed every vine in switch liqueur, of which virtue engendered is the fleur, is the first 4 lines of the Canterbury Tales, which is in English.
Now, I speak contemporary English. My coworkers speak contemporary English, so it's easy for us to communicate. We have a generally commonly accepted meaning for words and syntax. However, sometimes miscommunication happens, and people are still nevertheless unclear as to what you were meaning. And when you add in like nonverbal communication, tone and body language, and situational context, it gets even more complicated to communicate. Small changes to language can throw people, for a loop that are only a generation apart. For example, you tell your manager that the customer had to be yeeted from the store because they were acting sus. Your manager probably doesn't know what the hell you're talking about.
Unless you work at GameStop.
And that's like a generation, That's a generation ago, And so, language changes.
This is the Lord's Prayer in contemporary English.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
This is the Lord's Prayer in early modern English, dated to about the 1600s.
Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
This is the Lord's Prayer in Middle English, dated to the 1300s.
Our Father that art in heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come to, be thy will done, in earth as in heaven. Give to us this day our bread, our other substance, and forgive to us our debts, as we forgive to our debtors, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
This is Old English, dated to about 1000 A.D.
Fader ure, thu de erton heavenum, si din nama je halgod, to bekomme din riche, je wurde din willa, on erdan, swa on heavenum, urna je dij kwamle kan slaaf, sule us to die, and for juvus ure gultas, swa we, for juvad urum gultendum, and ne je lardu us on kostnunge, akalusus of uvele, so liche.
Communication, nevertheless, is important. On June 27, 1954, the world's first nuclear power station started to generate electricity for the power grid in the Soviet Union. Now, nuclear radiation is something you should generally try to avoid or take precautions around if you cannot avoid, nuclear radiation. It causes skin burns and cancer and radiation sickness and all that kind of stuff. You kind of want to avoid that. So this nuclear power plant in the Soviet Union makes nuclear waste, like all other nuclear power plants, going forward. So now I don't plan to debate nuclear power in this episode because after 4 years of dealing with mega chuds online, I'm, more or less done with debate for the next little while. So this isn't really a pro or anti-nuclear episode. The gist of how these plants work is you put your radioactive material in, which is really hot, onto some material like H3O or H2O, whatever. Basically, it heats the liquid up to cause it to boil, which causes steam, which then drives a turbine, which makes your electricity. Eventually, the hot radioactive material can no longer be hot enough to be suitable for generating this electrical power. So you drive down the interstate and then throw it out the window of your station wagon. You yeet it out the window of your station wagon. Yeah, so I guess the question is, what should you do with this nuclear waste? Well, we can kind of treat it and find some other uses for it here and there. Some of it we just really can't do anything with given our current technological position or state or level of technological sophistication. So what do we do with it? Well, the one idea is you just simply bury it.
By me.
You mine
out in Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. You mine it out of the ground in northern Saskatchewan. There's a big hole where you took it out. Well, just shove it right back in there until whenever. So you dig a deep hole far away from populations. You throw it in there and you cover it up.
Who needs nature? It's a great place for uranium that's been used.
Nothing like spent nuclear fuel, it's really good. It's really a good thing. But here's the rub is the World Nuclear Association says that high level nuclear waste can take 1,000 to 10,000 years to return to sufficiently safe radioactivity levels of, what the ore was originally mined at. So kind of going back to the previous point, how would we communicate this? 10,000 years into the future that we've buried something terribly dangerous on this spot. And so whatever's roaming the earth, 1,000 years from now or 10,000 years from now knows that not to fuck with it,
This place is a message and part of a system of messages. Pay attention to it. Sending this message was important to us. We considered ourselves to be a powerful culture. This place is not a place of honor. No highly esteemed deed is commemorated here. Nothing valued is here. What is here was dangerous and repulsive to us. This message is a warning about danger. The danger is in a particular location. It increases towards the center. The center of danger is here, of a particular size and shape below us. The danger is still present in your time as it was in ours. The danger is to the body and it can kill. The form of danger is an emanation of energy. The danger is unleashed only if you substantially disturb this place physically. This place is best shunned and left uninhibited.
How do you communicate that? And like I said, over just 650 years, we've got this drastic change in language. Or even over a generation, you get a drastic change in how language is used. But you extend that over a much larger timeline where, it's literally millennia. So we don't know what's going to happen to it, in terms of language or how our society or culture or species is going to develop. We don't know if English is going to end up a dead language like Latin or Sumerian. We don't know what geological or climate events is going to happen. We don't know what wars are going to happen to decimate a nuclear burial site. You just can't bury it in the ground, put up a chain link fence around it saying, warning, radioactive waste burial, and walk away.
What if we do fuck all about global warming and global warming happens and the survivors of the global warming changes on Earth, we'll have to deal with nuclear waste possibly being buried somewhere. That could be another future, far 10,000 years in the future where just the survivors of our own fucked up whatever have to deal with yet another crisis created by us. How do we warn them? Yeah.
They're creatures known as ghouls.
Hey, Smoothskin, you need something?
And at that point, once you've been that irradiated, you basically become immortal.
Yeah, so how do you communicate this danger into the future? Luckily for us, the Sandia National Laboratories looked into this, and they arrived at the following points. The site must be marked, obviously.
Oh.
You think?
We're getting there.
Yeah, just leave it as an open pit so people can fall in.
There you go. The messages around the site must be truthful and informative. So anybody who encounters this waste site needs to know that this is the site of something dangerous. There needs to be several components within this system of markers and signage and notifications. A lot needs to be going on, a lot of redundant methods to show that this site is dangerous. Like I said, you just can't chain link fence it and put up a sign saying warning, radioactive waste.
Yeah. Plus a chain link fence will get torn down in 10,000 years,
Yeah, exactly. So moving further on that point, there needs to be multiple means of communication. There's got to be language communication. There's got to be pictographs. There should be scientific diagrams. Words are nice, but pictures and diagrams are pretty good to explain things too. I don't need to know that the box on the wall is full of needles, but I see the biohazard symbol on the box. I know I probably shouldn't be fishing for the forbidden prizes.
Right.
You see the biohazard sign, you don't put your hand in it. It's not what you do. What they also add is a fifth, finding is that there needs to be multiple levels of complexity within each message on the site marker. So like you want the unknown person or whatever being shows up, the run-of-the-mill trespasser who doesn't understand anything, to like the most technologically advanced future scientist, to understand what is going on and that the site is dangerous in some respect. So they proposed several, levels of complexity. So level 1 is something man-made is here. So the site is not natural. There's something artificial. Level 2, something man-made is here and it's dangerous. Level 3 will tell you the what, the when, the why, the how, the where, the how, the who, the W5 thing. Level 4 will contain more complex information, written records, tables, figures, graphs, maps, diagrams, that kind of thing. And then level 5 had also been proposed, which was the idea of like complete rule-making record, which would be like also stored in like an archive. Basically, no one level of complexity is more important than the other, and we should be trying to avoid making it seem like there's a more important level of complexity than any others. So like, for example, level 4 may be like complete gibberish to someone, but level 2 would be clearly understood.
Just to clarify, level 5, is that like a time capsule, or is that like the complete amount? Would that be like, all these are the symptoms of radiation poisoning and here's how you treat it and like all that stuff?
Yeah, like it would just be very detailed, stored in like an archive, on the site to, so that if somebody's, like if you are the most technologically advanced scientist and we haven't managed to wipe ourselves out in 10,000 years, the future scientists would be able to look at that and say, okay, so this is where all the waste came from. This is what it's comprised of. Here's how they have it sorted and cataloged. And now we can set to work harvesting it for our future wasteless nuclear power plants, or whatever they got to do to, whatever they want to do with the waste, they'll be able to understand what everything was and how it was produced.
I'm trying to imagine myself in a future in an irradiated post-nuclear future where I'm essentially reading through like 100 years ago's like, oh, this is the OSHA code that we're meant to find, or like, oh, here's the serial number breakdown. Oh, this waste was produced in 2008, and this number means it's from this county.
Yes, exactly. That would be level 5.
I can
way more
highly
information
imagine this
than what anybody would need. But if you're decommissioning a waste site because you can use the waste now, maybe that would be helpful.
I almost appreciate the foresight because it seems so uncommon.
Well, whenever I try to clean my phone from like stuff that I downloaded that I don't want or need anymore, it's kind of a pain in the ass because I'm like, I don't even know why I screenshotted that. And I can't even, and that's just me on my phone that I change out every 2 years. So I can't imagine like 10,000 years down the road, someone trying to make heads or tails of something unless it's like really well documented.
It's like me sticking Christmas lights on a tub and then hoping future generations will know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah, precisely.
Exactly.
Like say you go with pictograms, you just want to warn people about radiation. How do you IKEA catalog diagram like radiation poisoning, stay away? Like that's a complicated concept to get across.
Exactly.
I'm imagining Adventure Time future where people are just running around with no idea what any 20th century word, 21st century words mean. They just fall into glowing green pits.
Well, if post-apocalyptic nuclear future is your thing, I recommend a book. I believe it was called Ridley Walker. It's written phonetically. So like the words are like contemporary language, but everything is phonetic.
Yeah, it's written out weird.
So it's hard to read in that respect, but if you like speak it out, you know what you're saying.
It's a cool world building thing.
But it talks, and it's sort of like this kid's journal as he like goes off and wants to like, fight other tribes and meets up with other scientists, and they're trying to build like nuclear weapons again, even though nuclear weapons are what put them into that position, because they want to be able to be the powerful ones, to have these nuclear weapons again that we don't have anymore because we blew them all up. It's a very interesting book. I read it years ago. Maybe I'm not 100% on the synopsis, but yeah, post-nuclear world is your thing. Check that out.
So this is a complete aside, but you're talking about spelling things out phonetically. I recalled that. So if you're in the UK, there is a language, I say in like almost quotes, but not quite, because it is a language kind of. It's called Scots, and the language of SCOT Scots is essentially English, but written out phonetically with a Scottish accent. So you can buy like books, but you can buy the first Harry Potter, and it's like the laddie. I gotta think. It's not the boy who lived. It's the laddie who lived. WHA. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley on number 4 FOW 4 private loan where through today they say that, and you can read a whole book where it's written out where you just get to hear a Scottish accent in your head. If you want a challenge, do it. Look up some Scots shit. It's a good time.
Sounds like a Patreon episode, I think.
Do it. Just do some Patreon readings of that. Find anything in Scots and read it out.
There's a really famous Robert Burns poem called To a Mouse, which starts, "We sleekit cower and timorous beastie, oh what a panic's in the breastie. Now need na star away so hasty, we bickering brattle. I had be lathe and rin and chase thee, me murdering prattle."
You should genuinely do some Scots stuff for a Patreon reward. This is great.
Yeah, read some Robert Burns.
The on the site, the use of materials also have to have like very little recycle value to them. You don't want that guy, going up to the site, seeing your copper signs, melting them down to make pots and pans in the next like 2,500 years. You don't want that to happen, because then your signs are useless and they're gone and someone made pots out of them. Yeah. You want them to see no point in, taking anything there or interfering with anything you set up. Basically everything has to have no value and no interest or no use to be able to mess around with it.
You don't want to cover your like structure and copper piping or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because that'll go missing, well, probably in 10 years, much less missing.
People steal copper piping now.
Exactly. Fuck, people are taking catalytic converters like crazy because they've got like precious metals in them, and like that's the thing we're dealing with locally in Canada here.
People talk about how the cyberpunk future, it's like, no, we're in the cyber present. It just isn't pretty or aesthetic looking. It's still already, people are scrappers because they're forced to. What the hell else are you going to do?
Well, exactly. So the other thing that they recommend, and of course this was that there would be an international effort to maintain knowledge of these locations of buried waste and the contents of the nuclear waste repositories. So basically the international community should be like globally aware of where all these sites are, what's all in them, and maintain a database of all this information as long as possible. Now, of course, nuclear waste, this information infrastructure, but we should be generally trying to keep people aware of what's here for as long as possible to ensure our warnings remain as relevant, so long as time goes on. This report had been written in 1993. So when that was written, the world wasn't quite as international or connected as it is today. So while this seems like a very easy feat to accomplish today, back then when the report was written, it involved a lot of international, cooperation, and had been quite the idea for an undertaking because, they didn't have the internet, which allows us to podcast with people in Arizona,
Yeah, like it was a big step up for the time.
Well, I guess they had the internet, but it was like all dial up and your modem would squeal and it would slow as shit,
Yeah, stick a card in there. It's mostly the U.S. military.
Yeah, precisely. So basically, to future societies, we must communicate this site without language. This place is a message and part of a system of messages. Pay attention to it. Sending this message was important to us. We considered ourselves to be a very powerful culture. Think of the hubris, that you feel that you need to communicate clearly to the future. That's, that would be a culture that sees itself as very powerful.
Well, I was trying to think, how would you preserve a language in English in this current form? You would have to open some agency, give them 10,000 years of funding up front, and their whole job would be to keep the cult of English going. But who knows if they're corrupt or if they're going to fail or if whatever system's supporting them are going to disappear. It wouldn't last to 10,000 years, I don't think.
One nuclear bomb will end it all very quickly. Boom, and it's done.
Pretty much every space sci-fi kind of long-lasting empires end up having some kind of techno-majocracy where technology isn't really used anymore, but it's religiously used. I could definitely see that happening.
The other message to communicate would be that this place is not a place of honor. No highly esteemed deed or person is commemorated here. Nothing is valued here. Because, if you don't know where you're going and suddenly you come to a giant monolith or something like that, and you're like, wow, they must have really loved this place and they must have really meant something to build this giant monolith here to let us know what's going on. And it's well, no, it's not a place of honor. We don't want people to look at this and think this is where the people of the past worshipped and we got to worship. It's no, you should get far away from this place. It's dangerous.
Isn't that exactly what you would say on the building that houses something really good? No, guys, there's nothing here. Don't come here. It's not worth it. It's I bet you there's something good in there.
Till you'll find nothing when you break in. It's a terrible feeling.
That's why the government is baiting people with Area 51. It's Area 52 you got to look for.
That's right.
If I can't break into these bases and find at least a cool new weapon, what's the point?
The BFG 9000.
The fat boy. I'm playing too much Fallout New Vegas. Every leftist millennial has just rediscovered Fallout New Vegas. Fucking guy made a 2-hour episode.
Sell their houses to who, Ben?
About how it's the best written game of the last few years. I'm it is though. I played it last month. It's so effing good.
It is. Man, you just come across a gun that turns people into goats, and all they can say is yeah, we funded some weird shit in the 60s, kid. Sorry.
The other things to communicate would be what is here was dangerous and repulsive to us. So this message is a warning about the danger. The danger is in a particular location and it increases as you move towards the center. The center of the danger is here of a particular size and shape, and it is below us, so that, anybody trying to dig, or thinking they might try to dig at the site will realize that as you dig deeper, you're just getting closer and closer to the danger.
It's that big golden disc we sent out into space, attempting to communicate with an alien species. What can we say that will definitely get across the point, to anyone or any being?
We actually sent 4 of those golden discs.
Oh shit! Nice. I know there was one on. Was it Voyager?
There were a couple of them on the Pioneer probes and a couple of them on the Voyager probes.
تحياتنا للأصدقاء في النجوم. Hello from the children of planet Earth.
I'm Timothy Ferris, and I produced the so-called golden record on the Voyager spacecraft. Sometimes people say, well, nowadays you could put a lot more information on, with the equivalent of a DVD or something, but we don't know how long optical media will last. We know how long grooves in metal last because we have a lot of historical record for that. In fact, the origins of writing are recorded in Sumerian cuneiform, which are gouges made in clay, and they're very stable for long periods of time. So if I were making the Voyager record again today, I would make it the same way. I would make an analog record because I know it'll last 1 billion years. It can last 1 billion years. Of course, it might have been a little harder to master the record now than it was in 1977 when people were still making records.
If the aliens dropped the first one, they have a backup. It's all good.
Well, we also have Star Trek: The Motion Picture. They found it. Maybe God.
Let me guess. Was it infected by like some future alien AI, and it had like something take over?
No, I just had like gained sentience, where like a satellite we sent out became its own creator thing to a whole new. Watch Star Trek: The Motion Picture, circa 1972 or whatever the hell.
The Enterprise scene where they're at ship dock is probably longer than this entire episode. I'm just going to throw that out there before you dig into it.
It's like you imagine a shot of somebody with their fresh Cadillac, but it's just that for 5 solid minutes with the Enterprise B or whatever.
Exactly. It's
a good shot. Pretty hot.
Listen, we
really.
spent $20,000 on the scale model, and damn it, we're going to get our money's worth.
Hell yes.
They built this entire vessel so that Voyager could actually fulfill its programming.
And on its journey back, it amassed so much knowledge. It achieved consciousness itself. It became a living thing.
Awaits the information.
Enterprise. Order up the ship's computer library records on the late 20th century NASA probe Voyager 6.
The other thing to communicate is that the danger is still present in your time as it was dangerous in our time. So whoever comes by it must know that it's still there and it's still dangerous. The danger is to the body and it can kill. The form of the danger is a release of energy. You know, it's not a gas or an odor or, it's an energy release. And the danger is unleashed only if you substantially disturb this place physically. This place is best shunned and left uninhabited. Now, some of these may make interesting slogans for clothing. For example, I would want a pair of boxers that say, "The danger is only unleashed if you substantially disturb this place physically."
You're saying that, like, whatever this place is, leave it alone, but there should be a gift stand in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. We should do that. Like, make like boxers that say this after we release this episode and just kind of promo them. I don't know.
That'd be amazing.
Now I got one of these stupid boxers.
Yeah, check out our merch store where that product exists. Hopefully, check it out.
Yeah, precisely.
We're in the YouTube future. It's like, this video is sponsored by uranium degradation.
Sponsored by your skin falling off.
Half-Life 5, but it's not a game. It's the actual half-life of this dangerous element. Please stay away.
So moving forward, kind of what would this site look like? So for like communication levels 1 and 2, basically something man-made is here and something man-made is here and it's dangerous. There had been a lot of emphasis on like communication in all languages and symbols as well as facial expressions. So like since the first written language appeared about 6,000 years ago, humans have not stopped writing. And so the people doing the report just sort of assumed that literacy would still continue into the future accordingly. Somehow, there were records back then to show that people were writing. There will be records left after us to show that we've been writing. There will probably be records that show us how to translate. As time goes on, people will create more written documents to translate what we write today into however they speak in the future. It's kind of like when you read your high school Shakespeare play, and then in the margin they like translate it into like modern contemporary English, so you actually know what the fuck they're saying. That sort of thing. The other thing is they proposed perhaps additional space be left on written markers so that future languages that emerge can write additional warnings on the signs as they go through, or as language evolves. If English falls out and some new language takes over as the global dominant language, or some sort of evolution thereof of like Chinese and English comes together and it's all new, they can still add warnings because there's still space on the big signs. The other thing is scientific symbols. So like a lot of things are true scientifically and universally. So for example, if you see a periodic table of elements and uranium is circled, you're looking at a message and would likely conclude that the symbol is telling you that there's something to do with uranium in the area. Because like the periodic table is not really going to change. It's a scientific, constant. So there was also interest in communication by a place. So one can walk in and sense that the environment itself is unwelcoming. And we sort of typically react the same. If we communicate to people today that some area or some environment was not welcoming, likely humans of the future would also react the same way. You step on the guy's lawn and he starts yelling at you. Well, that's pretty universal. Everybody kind of gets that, whether that was 100 years ago or today or 200 years in the future. You step on the guy's lawn, he starts yelling at you. It's not a welcoming environment, and you kind of get that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The other thing is that they brought up human facial expressions as well. Again, humans, regardless of culture, they universally smile when they're happy. They cry when they're sad. They scream out loud when they're surprised. And this is, it doesn't matter if you're European or Middle Eastern or East Asians or First Nations. It's universal.
And they show disgust. Disgust is a universal emotion also.
Yes, precisely. So...
Why have a face? My God, how could we live without a face? We wouldn't know who we were one from another. We wouldn't be able to know people's age as readily. You would lose age, you'd lose identity. It's a site for sexual signals, for our feelings, our emotions. We would survive without faces. For most people, the face is really their sense of identity. It's who you are, what marks you as. How you tell one person from another. It's probably the most personal, or one of the most personal parts and representations that we have. And not just because of the senses, although clearly if you taste and smell and eat and breathe, that's an awfully important part of yourself. But, behind the face is the brain. And the face, of course, is the display system, the primary one for emotions. In my first wave of studies, the first series, I just worked with people in literate cultures, South America, Japan, Europe, and North America as well. But the problem was, you could always say everybody had learned these expressions from the tube or the magazine. Maybe it was John Wayne and Charlie Chaplin, not our evolution, that was responsible. So to answer that, I went in 1967, 20 years ago, to a pre-literate culture in New Guinea, a group that had not had any contact at that time with the media. The first thing we did was to show them pictures and ask them to make up a story. What happened? Why is this person showing his face? And we analyzed those, and that's how we got, for example, that the best, most common story for a fear face was a wild pig is after you and you don't have no weapon. Or the best story for a sad face, the one that came up most often, was that your child had died.
If you pair this with the human's natural ability to recognize human traits and things like faces, it's a good way to aid in warning, or to assist you in communicating this warning, because people will see a face, they'll recognize the face, they'll see the facial expression.
Your human face will become a human skull if you get too close.
Yeah, they'll understand. So if you doubt this ability for humans to recognize human faces, I just want to let you know that people have seen Jesus on a piece of toast.
Yep.
For money.
Yeah,
I've seen Jesus literally in my dog's butt. He has,
that one's real.
Seriously,
That is
my dog has this. She's black and white, but she's got this white like right on her tail, and it looks like that picture of Jesus, like with his arms outstretched.
Oh,
like the
like the one
butthole
in
is
Rio?
the face. Yeah, like my dog's
one.
ass. It looks like Jesus.
Sometimes I'm baked and I stare at carpet and I see Grover from Sesame Street, you know?
Super Grover!
So this is not being in my shower. We have like there's wallpaper that is left over. We didn't put it. The people who previously owned it. There's a little strip of like wallpaper on the top thing, and it's supposed to be flowers. And I swear to Christ, I see Karl Marx's face in the thing, and that's not just me being weird. It like looks just like it.
It's amazing. Is it called pareidolia? Pareidolia?
I wish it was like seize the means of pareidolia.
There we go, part 1. Join us again for part 2 next week, where we continue to talk about how to warn the people of the future about the nuclear waste we create today. Until then, playing us out, this is The Look in Your Eyes by WhiteWolf, featuring Love Shadow. Enjoy, and see you in the after show.
You got the blues in the body, you know.
Hey, I'm going to try and make this after show short and sweet. Just gonna give thanks to a few people that need it, and then I'll let you go until next week. First, thank you to the people who listen to this podcast. Without people listening to the bullshit we say, this whole thing would seem kind of pointless. So it's nice to know that there's a few thousand you out there that occasionally let us into your ear holes a couple times a week. And we appreciate it. Thank you for listening to our inane bullshit. It helps this whole recording and release thing feel less like shouting into the void. And speaking of shouting into the void, the second group of people I want to thank are the communicators. The people that reach out, interact with our socials, write us emails, feedback at ovpod.ca if you want to write in. They give us feedback, valuable insights into their opinions on the stuff we cover and, stuff that we didn't cover that maybe we should have included, can be included later on because they were great enough to reach out. So thank you to those people. You also really help motivate us and keep us going every time we receive a letter or an email communication. I always share it in the group chat, and everybody's always really pumped about it. Third, I'd love to thank the patrons. The members of the Cult of Valhalla, who are responsible for purchasing the very equipment I'm recording on right now. In fact, this is the first episode that's edited and released by our new editing rig computer. And every bit of that computer was bought by Patreon money, by people donating every month, and us saving over a couple years to buy a machine that's going to last us a while. That's going to take us through our next few years, at least. It's going to help us gravitate and do new things if we want. It's given us a lot of room to play in, and we have the patrons to thank for that. And their continued support helps us dream and set new goals. We want to get some new mics left because we've been rocking the same $30 mics this whole time, and we make it sound good, but maybe we can get something that'll make us sound real crispy. And, if our patrons stick beside us and keep on supporting us every month and make this whole project float, then we're going to get there. And we're going to keep on experimenting and trying new things and trying to produce a good show for you guys. So once again, sorry for the delay in episodes. It took me a little while, more than I was planning to format the new computer. Also, new job in the real world, adult shit. But now we have a brand new machine, thanks to our patrons, and OVPod is back on track. Yeah, and just to wrap it all together with a bow, to our listeners, communicators, and patrons, thank you all. Subscribing helps us, communicating with us helps us, and signing up to our Patreon helps us. Patreon.com/OVPod. And, this is a community effort, and I like this little show we built, so thank you all so much. See you next week for part 2, where we talk a bit more about nuclear waste, but until then, you have a wonderful week.